Hello, everyone. Great to be with you. Brad Macbeth here from The Simple Plan. And man, there's a lot going on in the world right now. We had the, not at all unexpected, but sad death of Queen Elizabeth II just yesterday. And the Queen is dead. God save the King. And we also are living through, fairly rampant inflation and another interest rate increase this week. So I wanted to turn away this week from all that craziness and just take a look at what you might be able to do that's positive, not that's risky, but something that's really exciting. So we're going to go through, technically it can be referred to as cascading insurance, but it's really an amazing, powerful tax-free legacy that you can leave for your children or grandchildren. And in fact, you don't just leave it, you build it. So it's not just a legacy, it can be used by them during your lifetime, also, of course, throughout their lifetimes. So I want to show you how that works today. And we're going to just take a sec here to see if we can get our microphone switched around. Just 1 second. All right, there we go. Now we're back on the track we want to be on with our audio. Okay, so I want to invite you, as always, to join our Simple Plan community. You can join us there. It's a group of like-minded people who are walking through the same paths of life, trying to do the best for their finances, doing the most with their money, and honoring what they've been blessed with. And of course, you're also welcome. We put out a weekly offering of information, tips, tricks, links to all of our live broadcasts and that every week in your email inbox. You can subscribe at go.getthesimpleplan.com/subscribe. So look forward, hopefully, to seeing you there. All right, let's just dig right down into it today. We're going to take a look at what this might look like. Whoop, we don't have quite the view we're looking for here. Let's just go back and get that sorted. Why has that changed? Interesting. Okay. 1 second. We'll get this straightened out. There we go. Okay, there we go. So what we're looking at is what we refer to as a private tax sheltered reserve for your children or grandchildren. And we're going to take a look at the basic concept, and then a simple example, and then the complexities within an actual example. So how does it work? Well, we get a parent, if you're a parent or a grandparent, you can purchase a policy, a life insurance policy with your child as the insured life, or your grandchild. And you fund that policy in order to build significant value. So we're using a cash value policy here. Generally, I recommend and prefer to use whole life policies. You name the adult child, as a contingent owner and primary beneficiary. So if you're doing this for your grandchild, you're going to name the parent of the grandchild, your adult child, as the contingent owner and primary beneficiary. Now, you can also name yourself as the primary beneficiary while you continue to be alive. And the money that's deposited in here grows tax exempt. So here's an illustration of the concept. It's a simplified illustration, but you purchase life insurance on the life of the child or the grandchild. And I'm referring to a young child here. The younger they are, the better. You can start out from, you can get a policy on them 15 days after they're born and take it from there. But you can start anytime, but that's as early as you can start it. Now you would name the child or the grandchild as the contingent owner, and the money deposited grows tax exempt, as we said. So why would you do that? What's the advantage of doing this kind of thing? Well, here are the things that, among others, that come about from doing this. First, you're leaving, ultimately, you will leave a generous legacy that you'll be remembered for. But there's a tax-exempt accumulation of wealth going on inside these policies, and you get a tax-free intergenerational wealth transfer. It gives your child or grandchild a great financial head start in life. Also gives them a great head start on the insurance side of life, because it's going to bring in much lower premium costs for the child, and it locks in the child's insurability within the kind of the boundaries of that particular policy. So, for example, if a child or a young adult develops something that makes them uninsurable, like or might put them in a category where we're going to pay a lot more for insurance, like, for example, they become diabetic, you've locked in the insurability of that child at that lower premium cost. That doesn't change no matter what happens to them. Now, ultimately, this also avoids estate and probate fees in transferring this wealth down through your generations. And you're creating a lifelong valuable asset where the benefits can be accessed. You don't have to die for them to access these benefits if you live a long, long life. And that really depends on the timing. Back in the day, when people were getting married in their early 20s and having children fairly promptly after that, if you had a child who was born, who had your grandchild at their age 22, and you were 22 when your child was born, well, of course, that means you became a grandparent at 44. So, you could live well into that child's 50s or grandchild's 50s. Now, as people are delaying marriage and children to later, you could easily be 60 or 65 or even 70 before you see grandchildren. And so you're only going to live, maybe 20, 25 years into your grandchild's life. But however that works out, they're going to have access, lifelong access to that asset. And they can use that cash value as it develops for key purposes in life. So let's take a look at exactly what that might look like. So this is a simplified tool that gives us a basic illustration. So let me just zoom in here a bit. All right, so let's go to the child being 15 days old, so they're age 0. We'll make them a grandson. And most kids don't come out of the womb smoking, so they'll be a non-smoker. So let's look. You could do this with a minimal payment amount, but I want to look at a large example. So now I want to emphasize that this is for people who have surplus where they have the ability to leave a legacy. We're not talking about sacrificing in order to do this. You need to take care of your own retirement. So if you're a parent, of course, you need to be taking care of all those other things first, getting your debts paid off, having your own financial plan in order to be certain that you're going to retire well. You've got life insurance in your family. You own your home. It's paid out. Maybe you're helping your kids with education. You want to take care of all those things before you start looking at a plan like this. And for a grandparent, similarly, you want to make sure that you're not compromising in any way your financial security. But this is a great way to build something for your children or grandchildren that takes the risk out of it. So you're not trying to think of, well, I'm going to compromise or limit my retirement because I don't want to run out of money, or I want to save enough, leave enough money behind for my children. So I'm going to kind of scrimp on my retirement. By doing it this way, you can enjoy all of your retirement, spending your money, being happy in retirement, while building and leaving a remarkable legacy. So in this case, we're going to look at $5,000 a year, so a $416 monthly payment amount. We're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to look at, well, let's have them use the money, be able to access the money for education. And hopefully this hurries up. And we're going to get them to use it for their major life event as well. Oh, there we go. And we'll say they're going to go for their education at age 18. We'll use it for a major life event. Let's say at age 45, they're going to want to, maybe they're going to want to start their own business, and they'll be able to access the money in order to do that. And then we're going to have them, and by them, we're referring to, in this case, a grandchild retiring at age 65. And the final estate transfer will take place at age 100, which means when your grandchild passes on, this money will cascade down even further. All right, so let's see what that's going to look like. So, using a payment term of 20 years. So this is all guaranteed in these policies, by the way. So using a payment term of 20 years, you're going to make those payments, the $5,000 a year payments, $416.67 a month, for only 20 years. And at age 100, that's going to, and this is the grandchild's age 100, this is going to have a projected cash value of $5.7 million. Now, bear in mind, this is all life insurance. So that means that $5.7 million is then going to pass tax-free to your grandchildren's children or grandchildren, whatever they prefer to do, as a benefit in a payout from a life insurance policy. Therefore, it transfers tax-free. So how does this work? Well, at age 18, the grandchild is going to have access, projected value of about $86,000 that they could use to help fund their education. We mentioned at age 85 that they were maybe going to look at starting their own business, 85. At age 45, they were going to start looking at perhaps funding the development of their own business. Well, they're going to have nearly $500,000 that they're going to be able to access in order to support that. Retiring at age 65, they have potential cash that they can access of about $1.3 million. And if they manage to get all the way through without using up the money, so maybe they took the money for the business, but they deposited it back once the business got going, for example. If they don't use the money up, then at their age 100, they're going to leave a legacy of $5.7 million. Tax-free again. All of this is happening internally tax-free. The money grows tax-free. They're able to access the money for these different life purposes, for education, for the business or whatever major life benefit we're talking about at age 45. And it doesn't have to be age 45, it can be any age. For retirement, and again, if they have allowed that asset to continue to build, When they pass on at, we've projected age 100 here, your grandchildren are then going to pass on $5.7 million to their children and grandchildren. Now, imagine how your name is going to come up in all of that, that throughout your generations, you're now in the realm of your great-great-grandchildren being provided a substantial legacy from you having funded this policy for 20 years for $5,000 a year. So that's $100,000 that you've put in, and you've left a legacy 4 or 5 generations down of over $5 million. Now, just to clarify, the investment pool that this goes into is called the PAR account. Inside, in this case, we're looking at Equitable life insurance, but other companies do it as well, RBC, many other companies. And I like to use Equitable as an example because they've been running their PAR fund, so this pooled money, since the 1930s. They've never missed a year where they've paid a dividend, which is the growth that gets paid out on this fund into your policy. And currently, that is at 6.05%. And I think it can be argued that if you look historically, that not only is this at the very least as safe as bonds as an investment, but it actually performs much better. In fact, over the last 20 years, and I talked about this a little earlier in another broadcast, this fund has delivered about 7.5% over the last 20 years. Whereas bonds, the bonds that people are holding inside their blended portfolios, their so-called safety part, the bond component of these portfolios, has been paying about a little less than 2% in Canada over the last 20 years. And this year, the dividend that was paid from the par-funded Equitable was 6.05%, same as the previous year. I anticipate that that's going to start to increase a little bit. Now, they're slow to respond because it's conservatively run, but as we see investment returns and inflation doing all the things they've been doing, I believe you'll see that these will increase. So this is a fantastic, simple example. Now, I want to look at we'll look into the details of how this works here a little more deeply. So we prepared one. Grandpa Jones has created one of these policies for grandchild Charlie and putting in the $416 a month, $5,000 a year for 20 years. Now, and by the way, the initial insurance face value on this policy for this child right out of the gate is going to be $671,000. So, we're not trying to play the lottery on this child's life. But if something tragic did happen to the child, there's a substantial insurance benefit that's going to pay out. So we see here a few milestones. Let's just zoom in a bit. At Grandpa Tom's life expectancy, which is, let's say, age 85, Charlie has $112,000 of cash value he can use for college or a house down payment or what have you. At age 33, he'd have $240,000 of cash value. We saw at age 45, he'd have about $500,000. We can also see we've got the premiums in red here, these red columns, and the cash value in green. And so we can see that this, for this policy, the premiums and the cash value after 12 years, the premiums and the cash value are about the same. Now, some people say, oh, well, you've had no return. Well, that's not the case. What you've been doing is building up the substantial fund inside this policy so that you only have to pay premiums for 20 years. And after 20 years, you no longer have to pay premiums. So we can see that, we'll have paid fully. We'll have paid the premiums, $100,000 worth of premiums after 20 years. And by year 33, this 100,000 has grown to 238,000. Now, again, I'm not. Some people say, well, you could get a better rate of return out of the right mutual funds or something like that, and that is definitely true. And so this is not a strategy that's aimed to mimic the returns of mutual funds or the stock market. And by all means, when we're building up our retirement portfolios, we want to make sure that we have the horsepower that comes with long-term investing in the right mutual funds or stocks. But this is a much more conservative method of tax sheltering your investment and transferring money down through generations without creating any tax liability. We've seen many, many families, wealthy families in Canada do this. Ted Rogers, for example, talks about it substantially in his biography, how they use these types of life insurance strategies to transfer their wealth to other generations. So we see here the total insurance benefit increasing over time. We saw ultimately at Charlie's age 100, which means Grandpa, well, we're 100 years into the policy at that point, projected to be worth $5.7 million. And we can see that growing here. I've even done some analysis comparing it to using another type of, using bonds, for example, as an alternative investment. Well, your bond fund by even Grandpa's age 95 is going to be showing, this is year 95, would actually be Grandpa's age 161. But by year 95, your bond fund would only have accumulated about $400,000 from the initial $100,000 deposit, whereas the death benefit in the policy is now at nearly $6 million, and the cash value is at $4.2 million. And we're not making these numbers up. We're taking them both from the historical performance of the PAR account inside these plans and also from the historical performance of bond funds in Canada. And so you can see that there's just a much more significant amount that's going to cascade down through the generations of your family, keeping your wealth in the hands of your family, your hard-earned money and its growth, rather than having it frittered away into taxes. And this is not some kind of a scheme. This is just all because of the tax treatment of insurance policies in Canada. There's nothing edgy about this type of plan at all. It's a very conservative plan, but it will pass your wealth and grow your wealth, sheltered from tax down through the generations of your family. So that's, you can actually have a look at this report. You'll see in our weekly and monthly emails, and we're also sending out an email to all of our friends just outlining this plan for them. We'd be happy to chat with you about it, whether it's right for you. It's definitely not right for everybody. It fits some families, others it doesn't, for all sorts of reasons. But for the family that it's right for, it's just a remarkable strategy. So if you're looking to be able to build true lifelong and intergenerational legacy and wealth transfer without being brutalized by taxes, we can show you how this might work for your family. So if you're interested in getting more information, of course, we post this and we'll answer any questions inside the Simple Plan community. You'll be able to see this in our newsletter if you just subscribe to the weekly. If you're already a client, then you're already going to see this as well in our monthly newsletter. But we'd love to talk to you individually just to look at whether this is the right strategy for you. Again, it may well not be, but we would love to get together with you. You can find us, you can book a time, book a 15-minute introduction or an hour if you want to chat a little more in depth. There's no cost at go.getthesimpleplan.com/calendar-new. And you're going to see that posted in the comments there. So thanks very much for joining us today. I look forward to helping you out if this is the type of thing that you might be interested in, or perhaps you're the child of parents who have some money and are trying to figure out how they can transfer it down to you or your children down the generations in the most tax effective way possible. Another thing to note is that when these pay out, bear in mind, this policy is just going to transfer, this account essentially is going to transfer down through the generations without anything significant taking place. It's just an automatic transfer that happens when the initial account holder dies. And so it avoids all the messiness and costs of probate and everything that goes with estate processing. But also when it does finally pay out, so for example, when the grandchild is passed on, and maybe that's 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years later, when it does finally pay out, it will pay out directly to the named beneficiaries. And that will just be a check that gets issued within a couple of weeks of the death of the insured. No muss, no fuss, not the months and months or sometimes years that goes on with processing estates and the whole probate process. We find this is just a remarkable strategy for the right situation. Where it fits, it's a great opportunity. So thanks very much. Hopefully this has been of interest to you, and I'd love to chat with you more about it. Feel free to go ahead and book an appointment. And thanks for taking time out of your day to listen to us. If you have any questions, let us know. We're always here to help. Take care.